there everyone, it's Ashley and I'm so excited to be part of Trinity Stamps for another term. I will be making two cards today, both watercolor. For this first card here, well for both of them, I'm going to tear the bottom of it off. I really like that raw edge on watercolor cards. If you've ever watched Christina Werner, she does something similar to this look, and she calls it faux dip dyed. And this is kind of inspired from that, except I'm going to be doing this card as an ombre from lightest to darkest, darkest being down at that raw edge. And I'm going to make it as smooth of a watercolor blend as I can. So this is some cold press Canson XL watercolor paper, and this is very easily accessible watercolor paper. I even think you can find it at like Walmart. And then I'm using some mint tape, and I really like this. It's kind of a paperier tape than washi tape, rips really easy, and I'm using that to hold down this paper because it will swell up once I add water to it. So this kind of helps me hold it in place and keep it nice and flat so my colors don't kind of drift and go where I don't want them to. So I'm going to be using the Mole-bile stamp, and then I will also be using this If Kisses Were Snowflakes, I'd Send You a Blizzard stamp. For my first card, I'm going to be using some Spectrum Noir Aqua. It is like a liquid watercolor, and I've swatched out some colors there trying to decide which ones I wanted to use, and decided on Blue Topaz for my light and Starry Sky for my dark. And I'll kind of mix both of them together to transition through so it blends really well. So I've taken my palette and just took a dropper and kind of started putting some of these colors in the palette. And then I'm going to pull some brushes. I just pulled these round brushes. I think they're that one is a 14, and I think my other one is a 9. And I use a big bucket of water. I've started doing that. I used to just use a little mason jar, and I was finding myself having to refill it, dump it, refill it all the time. I have a big bucket like this, so the color just disperses in it. You don't need to be getting up every 5 minutes to refill it. So I've dipped my clean brush into the water, and I'm just starting to lay that water down on top of my watercolor paper. Now I am not going all the way up to the top because I want my top line of color to be very light, almost white, and kind of drift into that top white space on this paper, so that kind of blend is seamless from top to bottom. So I'm just laying down some water, doing a wet on wet technique here. And my suggestion, if you try something like this, is when you start your water on the top of the card, go lower than you think, because I find myself when I do this going up higher just to get that blend really well blended into the top. So start lower than you think because you'll probably go up higher. So I'm starting with my lighter blue topaz color, and I added a lot of water to it, and I'm just starting to lay that down. So next I'm coming in still with my blue topaz color, the lighter color, with a little bit less water added to it, and starting to work my way down towards that raw edge. So this brush that I'm using is a synthetic squirrel brush, so I think it's supposed to mimic squirrel hair, but I really like it because it's really soft. It holds a lot of water, and something that I learned is if you flick a brush over your finger, kind of back and forth, and it's really snappy and it snaps back, that's probably a brush that's better for acrylic paper. You could still use it on watercolor paper, and I definitely have, but if you find a brush that isn't as snappy, it's probably better or probably more made for watercoloring. So now I'm just finishing up with my first layer. I always do 2 layers when I'm doing this technique, just get it a little bit darker. So between layers, I heat set it with my heat tool, and now I'm coming in with my second layer. And it's going in really bold with that dark color, and we'll blend it out. So now for this second layer, I'm just kind of working in reverse, blending that color out from bottom to top. And I'm picking up a lot more water this time to blend that out to get it to the lightness that I want it to be. While I finish the second layer, I'm going to go ahead and put some music on, and I will join you back when I am done. All right, so that's our first card all finished up. We will come back to this card after I complete the second card. So I've started the same way, but this time I decided to use Distress Oxides as watercolor. So I'm using Broken China, Mermaid Lagoon, and then Black Soot I will be using too, just to deepen and darken it up. So since this is Distress Oxide, as soon as I hit water on it, it's going to kind of whiten up, but I think that will be really pretty and it'll almost give it a pastel look for this one. So I'm just laying this straight down onto my glass mat, and I'm going to do the same thing for the black, but I'm going to scooch it over farther on my glass mat so I don't possibly contaminate my two blue swatches here. So I am starting out the same exact way as the first card, using a clean brush and clean water and just wetting down my card here. If you get puddles, that is going to make your ink want to kind of spread around that puddle. So you want to make sure that you have an even amount of water spread around your card and not too dry either, otherwise you'll get really streaky marks. So a lot of watercoloring is just kind of playing around and getting a feel for it, and a lot of it is patience as well. So this technique would be a lot of fun just to play around if you're kind of feeling that, after Christmas, kind of not sure what to craft, because we've been so focused on the holidays and everything, and now that's done. I know a lot of the times I'll get kind of in a little slump where I'm like, what do I do? It's not quite Valentine's yet. What do I do? So just watercoloring or doing something out of the ordinary, something a little more artsy, can kind of take me out of that and just kind of help me get back into that creative mode. And with these two cards today, I'm showing you how to do the same technique with two totally different mediums. So the first one we have is like a liquid watercolor, and this one is Distress Oxide ink. So it's two totally different things. So I want you to be able to look at your craft area and see what you have that could work. Maybe you don't have traditional watercolors, but maybe you just have distress inks, or maybe you have watercolor pencils that you could try something like this with, or even Crayola or Prang watercolors, those palettes that a lot of the times we get for kids and stuff like that. They work great for this technique. I've done it many times and it works great. And I love that those have a little palette built into it, so you don't need to have something separate. And they're easy to travel with. So now I'm just going through this same as last time, building up my color and lightening it as I get to the top. Now, like I said, these are Distress Oxides, so it's really going to want to kind of lighten up and whiten up and almost give me that chalky feel. So it's definitely not going to get as deep and dark at the bottom of this as the first card, just because that black soot likes to lighten up. But I'm just kind of going through, same as before, adding a lot of water, adding some ink, and lightening it up as I get towards the top, and just doing long strokes side to side. So now I'm starting to dry that off a little bit, and I think I'm happy with how this one looks. And I'm going to go ahead and take that mint tape off. And if you pick it up and you decide, oh, I need to do more, you can always lay it all back down and put your paper and your tape back down and add more if you want. But I liked how this one was, so now I'm going to go ahead and lay this down on my stamping platform. Now, because this is watercolor paper, I want to use a really juicy but fine ink. So I'm using VersaFine. My VersaFine is pretty new, so it's really juicy, so it works really well for this. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this down. I really wanted it to be bold, and then I'm going to go ahead and use my embossing powder, just clear embossing powder, so it stands out. So if you used Versamark for this and did like a gold or silver or rose gold, or even white embossing powder, I think that would be really pretty too. For these two cards for this video, I wanted it to really be bright and bold for these stamps, but I really think that that would be beautiful too. I'm coming in with some clear embossing powder for the second card, and I will heat emboss that, and then we will put these cards together. So I trimmed the edges of this and then added some foam tape and mounted it onto my card base. And then next I am coming in with just a fine liner black marker and adding a couple more little dots that are kind of like similar to what's in the image, just to kind of make it go beyond the stamp. This is something I like to do. And if you were to do like white, you could use a jelly roll. That's white, Sakura jelly roll. Same thing with if you did other colors, I'm sure you can find like a gold pen or something like that. It's just fun to kind of do a little more artsy stuff with it and extend it beyond. And then lastly, I added some embellishments, and that card is done. And I will have everything listed below for you to take a peek at. All right, and here's our second card, and I ended up just doing a couple embellishments in the corner there. And again, I trimmed down the sides, put some foam tape on the back just to bump it up a little bit, and put it on my card back. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as Trinity Stamps YouTube channel and our Facebook group, Imagination, Inspiration, Conversation, for more crafty fun. I'm wishing everyone happiness, health, and lots of crafty time in the new year. Have a great day.